Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for registering and attending today's energy storage news webinar with a cure. We will be starting the webinar promptly in 5 minutes' time. So in 5 minutes, we'll be ready to go. So if you need to get yourself a pen and paper, cup of coffee, glass of water, whatever you need to make yourself comfortable and give the speakers your full and undivided attention, please do that now. And yeah, we'll be ready to join you very shortly. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Energy Storage News webinar with a cure. on how data analytics can help unlock enhanced insurance conditions for battery energy storage systems. I'm Andy Colthorpe, editor of Energy Storage News and deputy editor-in-chief here at Solar Media. Lithium-ion batteries enable higher energy density, bulk storage, and discharge of electrons, and are the most commercially mature technology available at scale to add flexibility and integrate renewable energy onto the grid without also adding greenhouse gas emissions. Now, that's perhaps the most well-known set of advantages of lithium battery technology. But another is the way lithium-ion enables real-time digital control and monitoring of energy storage and dispatch, which makes it so fast responding and capable of outcompeting fossil fuels in ancillary service markets like frequency regulation, for example. But to offer all of those advantages of lithium-ion batteries, you have to be able to know with certainty at any time how those batteries will behave in the applications you use them for. Here, the energy storage industry is increasingly turning to cloud-based battery analytics, the AI-driven software layers that give energy storage stakeholders the visibility they need into their systems at the fundamental cell level. If you've been following our coverage on energy storage news, you'll certainly be aware of data analytics in the battery storage space. We've been fortunate to work with Accure and a number of other analytics providers on feature articles, technical papers, interviews, and webinars. And what has really excited me about all this is not just all the cool stuff I've learned about data analytics technologies, and there is a lot that's cool about data analytics, but also the different areas in which analytics plays a growing role in the industry. So we've heard about analytics that streamline the commissioning process, analytics for ensuring safety, availability, and performance, how analytics can enable better forecasting of battery life cycles, and much more. Today, we're focusing on one of modern life's few certainties, the need for insurance. Investing in a relatively new energy and power technology comes with associated challenges, one of which is the cost and complexity of getting suitable insurance cover. But just as we see standardization of technologies and offtake contracts as the industry matures, we could see solutions enter the market that streamline the process of obtaining insurance. As we will hear from today's speakers, analytics have been validated as a risk mitigation technology for battery asset developers, owners, investors, and managers. So we're very fortunate to be joined today, not just by Accure CEO Kai Philip Carys, but also Daniel Sherlock Burke, who is asset manager for Gore Street Capital, managing the operational portfolio of Gore Street Energy Storage Fund. And also joining us are Andrew Sinclair, who is Renewable Energy Practice Leader at PIB Insurance Brokers, and Richard Beebe, Director of Engineering and Construction at insurance provider HDI. As always, interaction with you, the audience, is really important to us. The speakers' presentations will be followed by an audience Q&A. You can put your questions in the tab you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll try to answer as many of your questions as possible in the short time we have allotted. But for those that we don't manage to cover, Accure representatives and the other speakers will be happy to reach out to you and reply to any that we don't get to in this session. And finally, last bit of housekeeping from me. Today's webinar is being recorded and it will be available to registrants on demand at Energy Storage News. So with that, and without further ado, it's my great pleasure to hand over to our first speaker, Andrew Sinclair of PIB. Hi, Andrew.
Hi, thanks, Sandy, and welcome to everybody that's joined us today. PIB Insurance Brokers are an international firm of insurance brokers. We have 4,000 staff. We handle and place over £3 billion worth of premium. And we have offices in 8 countries around the world with a global reach. As Andy said, I head up the renewable energy practice here at PIB, and I deal with all areas of renewable energy. Within that, battery energy storage is really a specialism within my specialism. I insured some of the earliest battery storage systems in the UK and have really made it my business to become a specialist in this area. Really, what I'm going to do on today's webinar is just really setting the scene. I'm going to cover the current insurance market position on battery storage, what the drivers are behind what insurers currently offer, how condition monitoring and maintenance is an important part of the insurance offer, where HDI come into it, and then I'll summarize that to lead on to the other speakers. So the insurance market position on batteries, BESS operators and owners' perception of insurance is that it's relatively expensive compared to other asset classes. And they're all looking to get better value and reduce cost of this significant overhead, particularly where revenues perhaps are down on forecast and the sort of revenues that have been experienced in prior years on battery storage. So what are the drivers behind why this type of insurance for this asset class is relatively expensive? Well, many things come into play generally that affect pricing and availability of insurance. But specific to battery storage, we have a relatively small pool of insurers that actually understand the technology enough to get comfortable enough to offer insurance and provide insurance capacity for this kind of asset. The technology, as you will know, is developing quickly, but the popular choice currently is lithium ion and lithium phosphate battery chemistries. And of course, these are still potentially combustible and explosive, and thermal runaway is a risk. Even though batteries are now containerized and they've certainly on the top tier versions, they are fitted with fire detection and suppression systems. Installations are designed with adequate spacing to mitigate the possibility of heat transfer and spreading fire. And there are also some off-gas detection systems that can now be incorporated into these containerized systems. However, the frontline physical protection and mitigation measures are limited and would still require the fire service to attend quickly and douse for a long period to fully extinguish. So this is key to insurers establishing the premium and terms they require. They know that a fire in a container will almost certainly write off that container. So they're looking at a reinstatement cost of maybe £250,000 plus, and that will be in the underwriter's mind when they're considering premium and terms for insuring. So moving on to condition monitoring and maintenance, and how does that impact? Well, in exploring further what risk management measures can be deployed, has led to understanding and monitoring what the battery behavior is at any point in time. And this is important. Data analytics and modeling is a way to establish preemptive intervention to prevent the loss occurring in the first instance. And that's where HDI come in, because they are currently the only insurer that have explored this fully and recognise it as a valuable risk management tool. And what's more, they are backing this up by reflecting this in setting their insurance premium and terms in policies for batteries. So in summary, we've looked at why battery insurance is priced the way it is, what can be done to mitigate the risks of fire and explosion, and how prevention can be improved through data analytics and modelling. Until battery chemistry where thermal runaway is not a possibility becomes commonplace, then I believe data analytics and modelling is the most significant step forwards in batteries that can be currently achieved. Thank you for your time, and I would now like to hand over to Daniel of Gore Street Capital.
Fabulous. Thanks very much, Andrew. So hi everybody. It's a real pleasure to be speaking to everybody today in pretty good company and on a genuinely pretty interesting topic. So we'll be able to get fairly through the surface probably, but certainly when it comes to the analytics as well, like all the extra stuff we can do beyond the insurance improvements from a risk mitigation perspective, there's all sorts. I'd welcome all sorts of questions throughout, and hopefully we can get to you on the Q&A, but just a flag that we will have all of our details up at the end of this as well, so you can find all of our emails at the end if you want to get in touch. So my name, Dan Sherlock-Burke. I'm currently the head of asset performance for Gore Street Capital, which I'll run through in a second, but I'm here to talk to you really about how we've come up with this approach alongside PIB, HDI and Acure to sort of more suitably risk assess our technological approach to operating battery storage systems, and specifically two of the systems that we've just recently sort of begun operating in GB. So we're going to look at that, and then how we've unlocked various sort of benefits from an owner's perspective, which kind of package it all up into this fairly easy from an investment case to approve approach to the insurance and analytics that we put in on these sites. We'll go into the benefits in a little bit of detail, but for the sake of time, I'll probably just be briefly getting into that and taking questions afterwards. So who's Gore Street Capital? Well, for those that aren't aware of us, we're an alternative investment fund manager. Our most well-known client is going to be the Gore Street Energy Storage Fund, which is listed on the London Stock Exchange. And that is a utility scale energy storage fund diversified with assets all over the world. We've currently got projects across the UK, Ireland, Germany, Texas, and soon to be California. And there's also a new fund now, which is the Japanese fund, which is the first fund dedicated to grid scale energy storage systems in Japan as well. So we'll soon be in that region also. But yeah, over 400 megawatts now energized or operational, and a lot more coming on in the pipeline. Myself, as the head of asset performance, that gives me quite a bit of the asset management hat. So I actually run the asset management team, but also have a technical angle to support the decisions we make for the products that we choose and the technical approach we have to operate our assets in general. From the asset management perspective then, what am I trying to do? Well, we're an asset owner operator really, or we're acting on behalf of asset owner operators. And what my focus is really is to drive the profitability of those projects. So you can do that in several ways, but the most simple, I suppose, would be to think about being proactive on engaging new markets. So when you get, say, a new ancillary service becoming available, you and me and my team will want to be ensuring with our optimizers that we're getting into those markets early, before the markets are saturated and when prices are generally the most beneficial. It's also when it's probably hardest to get in because there's still the teething errors and figuring out difficulties of pre-qualification. We also want to reduce the downtime of our assets, and downtime can come in all sorts of forms. Worst case sort of ideas we're going to talk about on the safety side here with, say, a thermal runaway event leading to a loss of equipment. But generally, it's things like inverter failures when heat pumps fail, or battery racks go down because of a BMS error or something like that. And then the third aspect, the third sort of lever that I've got to pull is on the operational costs of the fleet. To be clear on this as well, I don't really want to phrase insurance as a pure cost for battery storage systems. At the end of the day, it's actually sort of a risk versus reward approach. It's actually mitigating our exposure to large losses. But there does come a premium or a cost alongside those policies, and where we can, if we can reduce the costs of those premiums in a beneficial manner, without materially exposing ourselves to increased risk, that's obviously something that we'd want to do. I've had quite a bit of a safety hat on throughout really the way that I've personally been interacting with batteries. So before I joined Gore Street, probably 9-10 years ago, I was at a company that had some of the first battery storage systems connected in GB, starting out with a lead acid system and then moving on to one of the first, the first battery dispatched on the UK's balancing mechanism. I took that sort of knowledge and experience of projects from that company to Gore Street just over 3 years ago. And while I've been there, I've had quite a lot of responsibility for our approach. But Gore Street as a company, we've got nearly 50 people working now. We've expanded quite a bit, and we've always had quite a focus on thought leadership and absolutely no cutting corners on safety. But beyond just not cutting corners, it's finding out new approaches that can materially improve the safety of our fleet. Because to all of us, we really don't want to see any of these assets catch fire, and firmly believe that if we can show and lead by example and the industry follows, we all benefit from that. I think we're all probably, and many people on this webinar will appreciate how difficult it can be sometimes on planning applications because of a lot of uncertainty around the way the battery is going to be operated. And frankly, a lot of the time, the questions that are asked to developers, which is well before you get into the detailed design, aren't really answered in a very confidence-inspiring way. We've had quite a lot of new people getting into the industry, quite a lot of investment getting in. It's an exponentially increasing development of battery storage systems, not just in GB, but now in other territories and other countries around the world. And with that comes an inexperience, and maybe also an inability to have the time to ask the right questions and do things that aren't just the business as usual. So one of the other sort of hats that I wear is I chair a couple of different groups in the UK. So the Electricity Storage Networks Safety, Sustainability and Supply Chain Working Group, where we have really good discussions with people in the industry in the UK about all of those aspects, and often, and most of the time actually, have a heavy focus on fire safety. But I'm also chairing the Health and Safety Governance Group, which is alongside DESNZ, which for those who don't know, that's the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero here in the UK. And we've just recently, actually a few weeks ago, put out some pretty high level guidance on the safety of energy storage systems and sort of the how-to sort of beginner's guide to questions that you need to ask when building these projects. And it's surprising, I think, how important that actually is to a lot of the people making the decisions, because the industry and the technology has changed so quickly that actually for a long time, in terms of the safety approach, a lot of it was getting led by insurers, or at least that's how it's always appeared to me. And it would be, to some people, probably even a tick box exercise in terms of the standards that you have. So people will probably be aware, or familiar at least, with the NFPA 855 spacing recommendations of 3 meters/10 feet between containers. And often you'd see that actually, in terms of a design, people are just complying to that requirement, but without really asking the question as to why. Another one which people are very familiar with is not so much a standard, but a testing procedure for UL 9540A. It regards the propagation of thermal runaway in a loss of control scenario, and recommendations for spacing of modules or sort of insulation between them to prevent a full loss scenario. But generally, when people have those things ticked off and say we're going to manage the project securely, we'll have a decent emergency response plan, which probably isn't vetted often enough. They'll have a fire risk assessment, but potentially they won't have actually showed it to the local fire services. All of these things are done, and that leads to fairly generic terms, or at least this is how it often appeared to me. If you look at all, I mean, on this slide, we've just got kind of all the projects that we have around the world that are currently operational, but more being built. Each one of them would have been done independently with its own sort of insurance policy, because often they're set up as different special purchase vehicles and such. And you go through this process to get an insurance policy on all of them based on sort of what their technical setup is, and then generally what's the probable maximum loss on it, how do we need to look at the cost of replacing it versus the revenue that we're going to lose in the downtime, and go through a generic approach to then get a policy. You go to the market, get quotes for the premiums, and probably are just going to choose the best one for you. We've been doing it for quite a long time at Gore Street, so we've got quite a lot of experience and know some of the improvements that we should make. And instead of being flat-footed on the technical approach, not just saying, is there a fire suppression system, but saying, is that fire suppression system suitable for what we're doing? Is really it fair to put just an aerosol which can't remove heat from a NMC battery fire? Is that suitable for the container, or do we actually need to be looking at deflagration and venting? Is our emergency response plan correct? But beyond that, what can analytics do for us? That was something that I've been looking at with Acure and others as well for the last more than a couple of years. And these are always approaches that we were looking at Gore Street from a thought leadership perspective to genuinely try and do regardless. We appreciate that there would have been a cost, but it would add a material benefit to the fleet management approach that we have. So I guess it's a good time to return to what the topic is, and it's really about unlocking the full potential of these systems. You could look at that from both a costs perspective, if you put the asset management hat on anyway, and also a risks perspective. So are we going to materially reduce the risks, or are we going to materially reduce the costs? And what we've gotten to today, realistically, is a attractive package where, at least for these specific sites, and every site is different, has its own risks to consider and should be treated independently. But in two cases, we've been successful to come up with an insurance approach which suitably risk assesses our operational strategy, inclusive of analytics, to improve the safety of the systems. And that's effectively led to a point where the risk of the thermal runaway is considered to be mitigated, and a suitable mitigation measure being accepted is the analytics. That has led to a premium where, if you combine that with the cost of actually the doing of the analytics as well, is an attractive package that, from my perspective, becomes very easy to sort of sell, I guess, to the investment side and justify those costs to the fund. So it's very exciting that we managed to get here. It's been quite a long time coming because we've had quite a limited pool of insurers that are out there as well. And really, it's still quite new technology, and demonstrating it and getting it approved. I'm sure that KP and HDI, KP and Richard are going to talk about that during their aspects as well. It all came about over probably more than a couple of years as well, not just on the trialing of the software. So Gore Street's been involved with trials of Acure's software at a couple of sites for quite a while now. We've seen it work, we know it works, and we're happy with how it works. We've actually currently got it live on a couple of our sites too, including one of these here, Stony, which we've recently announced the approach in a piece of marketing material we released recently. So Stony's currently got that running. But beyond that as well, how do we actually get access to the market to actually find these insurance premiums that are thinking in a more proactive approach? Not just saying, I have a site, I want to insure it, what can I get? Choose the cheapest one. It's, we have an approach. We want to do these things that make the safety and make the operations better for our sites. Is there anyone out there that values this? So Andrew and I, a couple of years ago, would have been on a panel talking about battery fire risks. Always the insurance angle comes up in those sort of questions in those panels. We met each other there, started chatting about how we can approach fleet safety and really looking at improved ways for insurance for Gore Street generally as well. We started with these as our first insurance policies placed together, I believe it is. And it's taken quite a while to get there. And then, of course, through Acure, had the introductions to HDI and HDI's risk side with HDI Thinks, which will be talked about in a fair bit more detail shortly as well. The outcome then was this attractive package. It's an easy sell for asset managers like me. I wish we could do it for every site, but I do want to flag that it's specific to our two sites here, Stony and Ferrymuir, that we're talking about and have talked about so far. There's no guarantees of what those reductions were going to be, and I'm not going to say anything in terms of the numbers, but it's an easier justification to someone like me looking at risks and costs for the fleet to say we are materially reducing the chance of thermal runaway at our sites. The costs to us make so much logical sense to actually go and enable and bring in this technology. And even when a lot of those investors, whilst they obviously put a fair bit of weight on the words that you have, it's quite a hard topic to understand. So when it comes with this bundle where it's a massive safety improvement and it isn't going to cost a huge amount when it comes down to the overall OPEX, it's a great way to get started on actually seeing what this technology can do. We're not just getting that, we're not just getting safety improvements at our fleet as well. One area that I start to get very excited in, and probably putting the asset performance angle of my job description really to more use, is how we can use Acure actually to just generally improve the operations of our projects. So safety is obviously an important factor. It can do very, very cool things to tell you before you get to thermal runaway whether you should be taking modules out of use or all that stuff. But we can also look at better warranty tracking and warranty management. We're going to be able to get access to the data from our own sites, and instead of going through the cell supplier or the O&M provider, the operations and maintenance provider, we can pull that data ourselves and use it to track and vet warranty management. We can set up flags so that if we were potentially going to be breaching a warranty in terms of number of cycles per day, for example, we just stop operations of the system. And it could be a nice fail-safe to have in practice, because you may have, for example, debtors that want to have capacity guarantees on your site. So if you start voiding those, you might be in breach of some of your debt requirements as well, just as an example. Beyond that, you have a better understanding of how the batteries are performing. I think a fairly hot topic in the industry at the moment is about augmentation of batteries. And if it's not even augmentation, it's just about end of life of batteries and what you're going to do when you need to come to doing cell replacements or upgrades. Well, now you actually have information on the degradation behind each battery rack, or even down to a module level, and you can smartly shuffle all of those modules around so that you end up with racks that are similar state of health, and not just easier to manage in practice, but you can unlock more capacity from them so you can reduce the amount of augmentation that you need to do. Beyond this as well, and I'll leave it really just as a question for people to think about, is imagine you had a better and better understanding of how your batteries have behaved to date and how they're going to behave in the future. Think about that from a project management perspective, or just an overall valuation of the project. When are you going to have to upgrade the batteries? When are you going to be replacing equipment? How well can you use them and actually make the most out of the cycles that you have? If you can actually calculate a dynamic opportunity cost, like, you can do so much in terms of your actual optimization strategy and really get the most out of the commercial performance of the systems too. So we've talked about kind of what the overall bundle is in a very short amount of detail. From my perspective as well, in terms of the fleet management side of things, personally, I've been excited about analytics for years and what it can do for batteries. It is fantastic to see finally a chance to actually get it over the line in a way that is, I'm not going to say the overall position, but attractive from an asset management OPEX perspective. If we can roll that out across other sites, it will be very exciting. And I think it's about time as well that the rest of the market, so we've got HDI really leading here. It's about time that we see other insurers as well following suit too, because ultimately it's a benefit for everyone. We're materially reducing the risk, we're reducing the chance of thermal runaway, we're improving the safety of these systems and making them more insurable. But I'll leave it there until the questions, and I will hand you over to, I think it's Richard.
Hi there, thank you, Daniel. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Richard Beebe. I am the Underwriting Director for Engineering Construction UK and Ireland at the insurance company HDI Global. HDI Global is a composite insurer offering multi-lines insurance coverage, including renewable energy. HDI are part of the Talanx Group. HDI are responsible for €7.6 billion gross written premium. There are over 3,900 employees worldwide, of which there are just over 180 risk engineers globally. From an insurer perspective, we provide securitization for the client's physical fleet or assets. In order to do this, we need to understand the client's approach to risk management. There are many ways of managing risk. One way, as a good example, would be taking a large self-insured retention, so a large deductible or even some form of captive participation. As insurers, though, HDI looks to understand your physical risk management approach, i.e. the fire protection, the specification of the equipment being used. Is it new? Is it old? The maintenance regimes, availability of critical spares, site security, and utilisation of best practice methods across all assets. And these are a few examples of the types of information that we would need. Battery energy storage systems is a fast developing segment, and as such, HDI needed to gain better understanding and insight into what the energy storage systems are and how they differ from conventional risks, as if ultimately our existing client base will require HDI to provide suitable insurance solutions as they transfer or transition into this new technology. So to enhance HDI's understanding of the battery storage systems, HDI, to improve and enhance our battery energy storage systems, the knowledge gathering process was started by HDI Thinks, who are HDI Global's research, development and innovation entity. As part of their research, HDI Thinks found that analytical systems are a key product which could provide next level and enhanced risk insight. And for them, Accure Battery Intelligence was seen as a leading provider of battery analytics technology. HDI Thinks and our own internal risk control team conducted a thorough assessment of the Accure solution, and its capabilities specifically were looked at for predicting fires. They came to the conclusion that it can be considered as a protection measure. HDI Thinks determined that the Accure system is an analytical solution that meets our needs as an insurer, in that it provides cutting-edge technology which looks at performance of the batteries and therefore improves the risk transparency. Essentially, it enhances our understanding of the risk. Having validated the Accure system, it has led to an exclusive partnership being agreed between Accure and HDI, and we look to work with each other going forward. From an insurance perspective, what does it mean using Accure? Well, the analytic data from the client's fleet or asset is captured by Accure. It's provided to HDI Thinks, who aggregates and translates the relevant risk alerts into an insurance insight, so we can understand it at an underwriting and risk engineering level. These insights are provided in a dashboard form to underwriters and risk engineers to give an enhanced view of the physical assets covered by the insurance program. In having this insight and understanding of what's going on with the physical assets, this builds an experience and it builds trust on the side of the insurer around how the assets are being managed on a real-time, daily, monthly or quarterly basis. In many ways, for the client, it's a bespoke monitoring system for the fleet or the assets. Ultimately, this improves the insurability of these battery energy storage systems, and using the Accure analytics, it could also translate into optimized insurance terms and conditions. As mentioned, Accure's analytics solution is a good security device for loss prevention, as it offers multi-function use. Accure's AI cloud-based predictive analytics software could increase safety in a number of ways. Reducing the risk of thermal runaway, as already mentioned, identifies underperforming systems and could support warranty claims. Enables predictive maintenance and increases total uptime and availability, tracks historical and predict future battery degradation, identifies optimization potential to prolong battery lifetime. Accure's innovative battery storage monitoring enables a truly data-driven approach, which, in addition, enhances the traditional insurance-focused physical risk management approach. This combination of approaches produces an encompassing and modern method for HDI as an insurer to better understand clients' management of risk. By combining the technology expertise of Accure Analytics, HDI Thinks innovation, and our deep underwriting and risk engineering capabilities, HDI create insurance solutions to support our clients through times of transformation. So thank you for your time. And I now hand over to the next speaker, who's Kai Philip from Accure. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. And thank you also to Andrew and Daniel. So I'm going to try and answer some of the typical questions that we get from a technical perspective in the next about 10, 12 minutes. I'm Kai Philip. I'm the CEO, one of the co-founders of Acure, engineer by trade, been working in batteries since 2008, and with insurance solutions since 2020. And it was quite a steep learning curve for me to get into the weeds of the insurance world. And I have to say a big thank you to HDI and HDI Thinks, who have been very patient in transferring the intricacies of the insurance world into language that a simple engineer like me can grasp. And I think that together we've achieved very, very cool and meaningful progress for the industry. And I'm happy to show you a bit of how we got here in the next 10 minutes. Just to set the scene, and this comes a bit back to what Andrew started this webinar with, why is battery safety an issue? Like, why are we spending a full hour with 4 different parties talking about it? Why do we have almost 400 people watching this webinar right now? Now, batteries are a exponentially growing field. Oh, and I almost forgot, Acure is a battery analytics company. You might have heard of us. We've got almost 50 BESS sites at the moment that we're supporting. It's going to be about 100 by the end of the year. So I think we are in a leading position to support owners and operators of battery assets with analytics in terms of safety, but as Daniel mentioned, also in terms of performance and lifetime. And now the reason we've got customers, you can look that up on our website. The reason we're here today, and the reason why safety for batteries is an interesting topic, is it's an exponentially growing industry. And with all exponentially growing industries, there are some teething issues. Now, the thing is, batteries, they force a lot of energy into small housings, which means that inevitably there will be risk associated with batteries, just as with any other energy technology like gas power plants, oil boilers, and all the likes. It's just a reality of the industry that if you manage high energy density technologies, there will be risk attached to it that needs to be managed. That's, I think, clear. Now, the interesting thing about batteries is they're new and they're growing fast. So a quick question for you all. What percentage of batteries that were produced today on the 15th of May, 2024, come from production lines that are less than 2 years old? Just think about it in your head. The answer is more than 50%. And that just means that the majority of batteries that goes into storage sites today come from production lines that might still have some of these teething issues. And from experience, we just know that scrap rates, for example, in battery production lines are inflated in the first couple of years. So the chances of having a, say, 1 in a million failure during production is actually higher than 1 in a million in the first couple of years. And that just translates into a transitional period of higher risk for a technology. The other part is, what about workforce? What percentage of BESS construction crews did not work with batteries 2 years ago? The answer, again, is the same, over half. That just means when people do something for the first time or for the second time, statistically, the chances are higher that they might overlook something or that they might make a mistake. That's not supposed to mean that it's a generally unsafe technology or that it's a generally unsafe thing to work on. It just means we need to pay closer attention. And that's really what battery data analytics are about, paying closer attention, being smarter about something. Now, on a very high level, and this is about the highest level I was able to put together, it looks like this. We've got a battery, we've got predictive analytics, and the result is reduced risk. Now, you probably got a lot of questions and probably a lot of good ones, and I try to collect the 6 top questions we typically get from companies that we work with, that approach us about analytics, and I'm going to go through with them in the next 6-7 minutes. So number one is, where do battery analytics fit in the value chain? And we're looking at the situation from the perspective of a BESS owner and operator right now. Typically, when you think about the BESS side, there's 2 layers. You've got the hardware layer, the equipment that in the end will store the energy, but you've also got a software and services layer. And on the hardware layer on the left-hand side, you've got the battery DC blocks, you've got power conversion system, plant controller, SCADA, fire extinguishing systems, all the likes. And then on the software and services layer, there's the route to market provider, there's an operations and maintenance teams, there's an insurance, and there's predictive analytics. And what predictive analytics really do is they combine the hardware and software layer with cloud computing, with artificial intelligence, with deep modeling. So what we do is we analyze and predict the status of the hardware to inform the services, which means unlock enhanced insurance conditions and optimize both operations and maintenance in terms of predictive maintenance, in terms of being smart about it, and also route to market, for example, when it comes to state of charge error mitigation. All right. The second question we usually get, what data is needed? And the way that we think about it, the hypothesis that Accure was really founded on, coming from my own experience of having developed a 7 megawatt-hour system 10 years ago, is that in order to be scalable, to be cost efficient, we need to come up with a solution that only uses readily available data. And the readily available data we use is voltage, current, and temperature coming from the BMS. So we don't need additional sensors. We don't need any product modifications or additional tests. We take the data that is already there. We use that, or we access that data through existing telematics solutions, through the SCADA, and then we crunch the numbers in the cloud and we push the results back through a dashboard to the individual customer and or to the insurance provider when we are in a partnership. The third one, this is close to my heart as an engineer. What type of battery models are used? And perhaps also connecting to what Dan said, as the CEO of a startup, I'm incredibly happy that one of the leading companies in this field tested our solution against others and in the end chose us. This makes us proud, and I think it kind of validates our approach here. And what I want to show is there's different approaches in the market. And obviously, I think the way that we do it is better, but I kind of want to give my reasoning, how I see the world and why is that. Not all analytics are created equal. What we see in the industry right now, more and more, are two kind of big claims. One is the use of black box AI models, where people promise you whatever, but can't really describe how they get to the results. So data goes in, then there's a big black hole, and then recommendations come out that are difficult to link to the original data. The other one is threshold and trend monitoring. And I put a quote here, will warn you if the temperature goes beyond 50 degrees C. And obviously that isn't really fulfilling the actual requirement of predictive analytics, because if the temperature goes beyond 50 degrees C, this gives you about enough time to go to the window and see it burn, right? What we want to do is warn our customers days and weeks ahead of any event that might cause temperatures to go into that range. The same is for voltage drifts, right? If the maximum and minimum cell voltage in a rack go astray by over 100 millivolt, that means something has happened days or weeks before. And so you actually want to predict that event, not the consequences of it down the line. So how do we do it? And what I just personally believe is the right approach. Number one, deterministic models. This is obviously, just one example, but one thing that we would be able to share with our customers, given that situation, is that we see a certain statistical outlier in a certain module that we can link to a known physical process, which is known to be safety critical. For example, lithium plating, which can lead to a rupture of the separator, which can lead to gassing, which again can lead to mechanical stress and all the likes. And it's really important that you can actually go down into the physical root cause of a warning to be able to give good recommendations, right? What are you going to do with a warning if you don't know what it actually means? The other thing is, if you want to have a solution that's practical, especially when used to a larger portfolio. It needs to be simple. And so what we've been doing for a year now, and I think we've come up with a very robust solution, is risk-adjusted scoring. So don't tell people how certain thresholds are. If they're interested, they can still look it up, but on a high level, the important thing is to give a solid scoring of danger, of risk. Is it critical? Is it something that you should keep an eye on, but no need to be immediately concerned, or is all good? And that's also really the base of the cooperation with HDI Thinks, who, based on our risk-adjusted scoring, translates this knowledge into insurance-relevant KPIs and risk assessment. Super, super important. How are the results validated? I mentioned it in the beginning. My first conversation with HDI Thinks goes back to 2020. We are in 2024 now, and so I'm really proud, I have to say, that we were able to go through such a detailed and long validation and diligence process with a company that has deep expertise in the field and come out with a partnership that's actually implemented. And how did we do that? And what should any of you require from a solution that claims to be safety improving? I brought a few ideas. Number one, dig deep. The way that I think about it, the way that we at Accure think about it, is the only way to prove an underlying hypothesis of battery analytics. Like, oh, do we see plating? Do we see a mechanical thing going on with the active materials? Do we have gassing, leakage, and all these fun things? The only way to really prove that is to basically go down into the weeds of the battery. And you usually do that with methodologies like CT scans on cell level or on module level. It's incredibly expensive to do full module CT scans, 5-digit US dollar fees per photo. And so if you want to have a decent amount of photos, which would be 10, 20, 30, it just adds up in cost. But you have to be willing to make that investment to see if it's working. Or SEM, EDX, electron microscope, and energy dispersive X-ray spectroscopy. You can basically see what happens on the surface of active material, what elements are in there and such. The other one is, it's not enough to do it once, because we update our algorithms at least every 2 to 3 months in small ways, but the changes add up over time. So after 12 months, you are basically running on a code base that's different from the one where you did your last validation, and so you need to do it again. And that just puts you in a constant cycle of having to validate again and again. But again, the impact of being able to spot something or not, and the ability to show it to also get improved insurance conditions is worth it. So that's what we've been doing for many, many years in quite significant depth. And then thirdly, I already mentioned HDI has been a partner all along since 2020. And I really have to give a shout out to the risk consulting department of HDI. They are incredibly sophisticated. And I think without the deep expertise that they already had in batteries, and they, for example, co-authored a safety report on battery systems back in 2019. Without that expertise, I suppose they would have not been comfortable in partnering with such a deep science tech provider as we are. Like, they were able to understand what we're doing, and that gave them comfort. Without that expertise, it probably would have been impossible for them to evaluate whether what we were doing is useful or not. So having a sophisticated insurer actually helps in a lot of cases. Should I use the existing system monitoring, for example, coming from a system integrator? I mean, you all can assume what I'm going to say next. As a third-party provider, of course, I'm going to say no. Let me just give you like 3 quick reasons why I believe that a third party is the better, and better for everyone, really. Number one, model sophistication. We've got, almost 40 battery experts on staff that do nothing else than battery analytics. No system integrator has comparable sophistication in terms of their own analytics solutions. They usually only do threshold monitoring. Number two, if you look at complex BESS portfolios, like Gore Street has one and many others are building up, hardware or vendor-specific solutions cannot scale across a diverse portfolio. So having one tool that compares all the sites with the same view makes it comparable. If you have different solutions for different systems, it becomes very messy and very difficult to tell how the systems hold up to each other. And then thirdly, obviously, if you are getting the information about, for example, LTSA compliance or warranty compliance from the same company that you would claim your LTSA or warranty against, it's a conflict of interest. And personally, I've been an expert witness in court 2 times already with our customers. We've been successful in both cases. And so I think that's a good point. Lastly, what is the relationship between the various parties? And Richard actually has touched on this already, so I'm just gonna leave it here for 20 seconds real quick. We've got Gore Street as the BESS owner and operator. They send data to us. We return results. We also share some of the high-level safety score and alerts with HDI through their digital enabler, HDI Thinks, who does the risk grading and insurance KPIs. And then it goes back to HDI, who are contracted by Gore Street through PIB. I've got one more, and actually, I didn't know that, Dan, you would also talk about, the non-safety part. So really quickly, safety is, I think, a really important aspect of battery analytics. And, in the energy industry, safety is top of mind always. So it's great that we can kind of tick that in order to show why analytics are, a good thing. But if you think about revenue optimization, if you think about the profitability of projects, the performance and lifetime aspect that our solution brings is actually much larger. So if you proactively manage equipment downtime, imbalances, state of charge errors, you just get more money out of the system. And oftentimes, a higher revenue has a bigger importance for a lot of financial models than a slight change to the costs. So the upside just comes with a multiplier. And battery analytics can really and have proven to unlock higher revenues for energy storage sites in all geographies, whether it's in ERCOT, where monetization is crazy, or in the UK, where it's a bit down at the moment, but that just makes it even more important to capture everything that's there, right? If the market value goes down, you need to be even more, even better at capturing the remaining opportunities. That's it from my side. You can get an ebook from us on the topic of insurance and our partnership with HDI following this QR code here. You can also find it on our website. And I'm happy to move into the questions now. Thank you all.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Kai Philip, and to all the other speakers. So yeah, we are going to have a question and answer session now. We're a little bit pushed for time, but you know what? If the speakers are okay with it, we'll stay on for a little bit longer than maybe we'd originally thought and see if we can get a few of these answered. So one thing to note is please don't worry or even despair if we don't get to your question. Acure and the rest of the speakers will be delighted to carry on this conversations offline and follow up with your questions afterwards. So with that in mind, let's get into a couple of these. So Kai Philip, I think there was a couple that were kind of around, I guess, the mechanics of how the Acure solution, or let's say analytics from another provider, just for interest of journalistic balance. But yeah, so Rakshith was asking, where in the system hierarchy does Acure software sort of plug in? Does it collect physical data from the BMS, the battery management system? How is this implemented without voiding warranties for existing equipment? And I think actually a very similar question from Oliver. So thank you very much to both of you for your questions there. KP, if you wouldn't mind, yeah, just giving us a quick explanation of that. That would be really helpful to start with.
Yeah. So the data we collect comes straight from the BMS. We don't need to make any changes to the system, so there's no warranty risks in terms of modifying the product, as there might be if you would install additional sensors. But as we're just grabbing what's already there, that's not an issue. Typically, the data is available on a rec level. For some BESS types, it's on more granular levels. That could be the module level or even the cell level. We do have some customers that have access to cell level data from their manufacturer, and our analytics are capable of working with all three of them. Obviously, there's small changes in the accuracy and on the granularity of what we can provide, but even on string level, we already can work also with the insurance partnership that this webinar is about.
Okay, sure. And Daniel, I don't know if you could just maybe just let's say, what's the word, complete the circle on that from the end user, let's say, point of view. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Kai Philip makes it sound very, very simple and easy to onboard. And but yeah, what's your perspective on that?
I would flag to anyone that's building out projects now to make sure they put it in their scope of work, employers' requirements, the ability to actually get data from sites, and ideally to be able to do it without additional hardware. You could send it up to wherever it is a Kia needs it via API, for example, or another approach, depending on what they take. But otherwise, you have to come in and start looking at potentially putting equipment onto the site to pull that data. It shouldn't be too hard. These are normally available already on the default sort of Modbus registers. You should be able to pull that data, but bear in mind that when you're operating, you're going to probably have an aggregator doing something similar. So however they're interfacing with the management system of the site, you may not actually have ports available even to pull the data. So you want to preempt for getting this data and make sure that you're making your suppliers deliver you a solution that makes that easy to do. It can take a couple of weeks really to just get that data to a Kia and have them getting set up, or it can take you quite a long time to figure out a new approach to actually add the ability to pull data from multiple controllers.
Okay, so fairly simple, but be proactive on it, I guess.
But not too worried about the warranty because you're pulling data that you already have right of access to.
Okay, terrific. Thanks for clearing that up. And a question here from Kasim, which is, I guess, a little bit of a bigger picture question, we could say, I suppose. So thanks very much for your question, by the way. And Kasim asks, it's great to hear of improved insurance conditions for those assets in the GB market through analytics. Would you expect the same cost reductions in US assets? And are there any questions we should be asking when considering this approach to reduce insurance costs for a specific asset? So I guess, I don't know, it might be quite hard to draw immediate parallels with the US market, but I suppose this question, if you don't mind me slightly reinterpreting it, Kasim, also, I guess, is on the replicability and scalability of something like this, I guess. So I just wonder, maybe Dan, given that Gore Street, as you said, has assets already in Texas, one due to come online in a few months, let's say in California and other markets. Yeah, how would you kind of view that?
So I'd probably flag, because I saw also one of the questions suggested that we'd said it was basically going to be possible at all assets. It is asset by asset, sort of case by case basis. So there's no guarantees that it's going to be available wherever it is. You need to look at those specific projects. But drawing it back to when we started trying to look at, or sort of reflecting, I guess, on we're doing all these things, but currently the market doesn't really understand the value of them. If you think about it, it's generally fairly similar equipment. So you are reducing risk in a similar manner. Probably, if you take it, and if it's in GB, if it's in Texas, it's still a risk mitigation. The question is, can you get access to a market in insurance where that is valued? Of course, it's something we're looking into currently. I'm not going to say for sure if it's the same or exact or what the levels are relative to each other, but the theory certainly holds that it should be an option.
And I can maybe say from our perspective that we are currently in the process with HDI in many different countries, many different continents. It's really good to have a player that has global presence and, for example, is by far the leading risk transfer solution in Australia, which is one of the leading battery markets for BESS. And so, yes, it's internationally available, but then insurance is a case-by-case business. I've learned that. So it's really hard to just say general things, but do get in touch with the HDI folks, and they will, very quickly be able to give you a rough estimation.
I was just going to interject there as well, KP, that of course HDI are a global insurer, as our PIB have global access as a broker. So yeah, absolutely, we can help anybody access HDI wherever in the world their assets are. It should indeed make a difference, but there are many other factors that will be local to the location that need to be considered, natural catastrophe risks and so on. So, as you've already said, each risk does need to be considered individually.
Terrific. And I mean, I think this is it's a topic that I feel like we could go down a real rabbit hole of pinpointing all of those differences, and perhaps that's just something we're not going to have time for today, but I can see already how that would, keep your hands full, really, I guess, as an insurance industry, and be a really interesting endeavor to take on. So, quick question for the insurance professionals. So, Andrew and Richard, if you wouldn't mind. Richard, first off, and I feel like this maybe is going to be, again, one of those instances where you can only really get into the surface of what could be quite a complicated question. But JC asks, and thanks for your question, JC, what key performance indicators are used by HDI risk engineering to help make informed assessments of the insurance risk? So I don't know if you could just give us a bit of a flavor of that, really, Richard, rather than a fully exhaustive, let's say, list.
Yeah, thank you. It's quite extensive, really. We cover a number of things. So the type of technology, the age of the technology, the maintenance regimes that are in place, the value of the assets, the location of the assets, etc. So there's a number of factors within what we do and how we analyse that, are such that it's about getting them as much information over to us as possible, essentially. So we want to know, bear with me one moment because I've got a checklist here. So it's kind of the system design, the floor plan, the site plan of the system, the separation distances, single line diagrams are helpful. We want to know about the transformers and the inverters. We want to know about the technology. So who is the manufacturer of the battery cell? What types of cell chemistry is used? Provide the UL numbers and the certificates, flashpoints of cells, and then the fire protection. What's in the unit or what isn't, or etc. What type of fire detection is it? That kind of items, and then the exposure values in addition to that, if that's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that is really, really helpful. And I just wonder if there's another question somewhat related on that from Pep. So yeah, thank you for your question, Pep. Asking if data needs to be shared on a regular basis with the insurer. Would insurance premiums increase if there is identification of issues developing, etc.? So I guess this is on the, what happens once the analytics are onboarded, once the premiums in place, the insurance is in place, and the asset is operating. Like, what is there sort of an ongoing play with the insurer, between the insurer and, say, the analytics provider or the project operator?
Yeah, so the data will be downloaded and supplied by a cure. Things go through, translate the data into, let's say, underwriter-friendly text, and then from there we would monitor. Now, we can either do it on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis. Realistically, it would make sense to analyse the data quarterly, and that quarterly review, we can see the trends that are coming from the various assets and go from there.
Okay, fantastic. And a question here from Nico. Thank you for your question, Nico. Whether insurers have a preferred or go-to analytics software provider for risk mitigation. And Kai Philip, I don't think you're allowed to answer that one. But yeah, I think more, perhaps, if not more pertinently, how do you benchmark their system's capabilities? So I'd like to ask, yeah, the insurance folks on that first, and then maybe because you did mention that obviously there's an evaluation process for Gore Street to select a cure. So maybe Daniel can take this one after, but yeah, if either Richard or Andrew would like to handle this from an insurance perspective, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, I can comment on that one. Really good question. And as Kai alluded to in his presentation, Cure have spent almost 4 years to get to this point with an insurer. So there are no other data analytics companies that have spent that much time working with an insurer to get to this point currently. Now, I'm kind of part way through a piece of work trying to bring a wider choice to our clients and future clients. So I have presented, if you like, a cure to pretty much most of the risk engineers and underwriters certainly in the London, the UK market that are involved in battery storage, along with what at this point one of Cure's competitors, and there's others scheduled to be presented to the market as well. So I'm doing everything I can to inform the insurers and encourage the insurers to engage with the data analytics companies. And one of the things that does, and it's very clearly done it already, is it really highlights the differences between them. And one of the things that Accure do that is really, really valuable is they've got this external third-party validation. So they've got numerous examples of, where they've interpreted the data. They have said that a certain chain of events will occur, or they've looked at past cases because they can go back on historical data, and by reading the data, they're able to say what would have occurred, and that's been validated by third parties. So insurers love that stuff. They love independent validation. They love the historical data. And, whenever we've started talking to insurers about, not just in batteries, but in other sectors as well, where there's a new, say, risk management piece of equipment, and we've taken it to insurers and said, look at this, it's brilliant, it's going to stop you having this kind of losses. The first thing they say is, prove it, So how can you prove that this has stopped losses already? And I think that is a massive challenge for the data analytics companies, because they are struggling to release the data that they ultimately have from third parties, from the battery operators.
Okay, thank you very much. And Richard, did you have a point to put in on that?
I was just going to say, we've partnered with Accure. They are our preferred exclusive analytics company. So yeah, Accure is the way forward.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so KP, you didn't need to answer that one after all, it seems.
Very kind of you, Richard. You're going to get the 20 quid right after, yeah, I feel on it.
All right, so yeah, talking of third-party opinion and validation, Daniel, just a few words then on how you evaluated Accure versus other options, let's say, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say on this that they're the only partner that we would use or anything like that, but it was a huge step forward to come forward with this overall insurance / analytics approach, which is just, it kind of became hard for others to really compete against that. Now, on top of that, obviously it's an excellent platform. I'm quite liking our way of using it. The service support we've been getting has been great, and the actual integration with difficult assets was a really key point for us, because we've been around for quite a while. We've got quite a lot of assets that are, you know, 5+ years old, and the technology's moved on. So you'd have things like remote terminal units where you can only access data and control through one port. So in order to avoid having to switch the controller that we had on site for the optimization stuff, we needed a sort of clever approach. And we found that worked really quite well with Acure. But yeah, generally it's been pretty high performance from them. There are others in the market. I'm not going to say we wouldn't use anyone, but in terms of an approach, this is currently the best approach for us from a fleet management perspective still. So it made it pretty hard for others to compete.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. And I think, should we just do one or two more quick questions, if that's all right with everyone to stay on for? And I think if we just broaden out the insurance topic a little bit, so obviously analytics seems to be, you know, a really key way of providing that sort of risk mitigation and ultimately, yeah, not just bringing down the costs of insurance, but also yeah, ensuring more safer operation, really, I guess. But there were a few questions. So Shivaditya, I'm sorry if I'm not said your name too well there. Thank you very much for your question. But asking about thermal cameras are a better approach for improving safety features, and if those will help contractually with the integrator, keeping insurance in perspective. And you know what? Let's just start with that one rather than trying to group these three together. So I think this is maybe about other approaches to monitoring systems, is it, I guess? And I don't know if someone wants to step forward, maybe Daniel?
Yeah, it probably makes sense. So some of it, hopefully we pointed to in the health and safety governance group's guidance, but if not, we talk about it all the time with ESN, and I'm always open to questions on this. So I would say insurance is one angle to think about, and it's been great from this perspective on the analytics. But remember as well, a bit patronizing actually, but like honestly, from a risk management perspective, you're not just trying to save costs, you're trying to improve the safety of the system. On that thermal camera question, I don't know if any sort of battery suppliers set up like live thermal imaging cameras within their containers. And on top of that, you'd need to be doing sort of image analysis to get sort of quick information and react to it. I'm not aware of people doing that at the moment. You tend to go over at maintenance visits and do those imaging checks. And honestly, that's unlikely to catch the thermal runaway in time if it was going to happen. It's a useful tool for analysis of the performance of battery racks, and you should use it. But it's not a sort of replacement for this software. It's not going to be as dynamic, and it's not going to warn you as early on unless you're very, very lucky and image at the right time. And in terms of other hardware as well, it's not always going to be valued right away. The technology is changing quickly, but there is value to you there by reducing the risk on your fleet of it catching fire. So, you know, question, should you be using water within the container versus an aerosol? Should you actually even have an emergency response procedure which doesn't require you to send firefighters towards a container that's on fire at all? Instead, design your system so it's suitably spaced. But always look for things like measuring the explosive gas within the containers and how you're going to deal with deflagration. So when there's explosions, like what direction does it go? I've seen a really great solution from one company where they have spark plugs going all the time. So as soon as you hit the lowest threshold for an explosion, it happens, instead of allowing, say, a thermal runaway to continue and more explosive gas to fill up the container, and then you've got a larger bomb. So there's a lot of tech out there. It's not all going to lead to an insurance improvement, but it's stuff you should consider, because for the cost of it, generally, it's a pretty good benefit. I think there was a specific question as well, just to finish on that, on the electrolyte vapor detection, something that I'm quite a big fan of, but it does come in later. So it's just another level of mitigation. And you should, and there was one on resiliency. Always think about your levels of protection. You're never going to be able to mitigate or eliminate, a fire risk, but you can mitigate it. And you don't just add analytics, look at your hardware setup and plan for the worst to make sure that if it does happen, bringing the site back online, you've got a procedure for it. And if there is an explosion on site, in the worst case scenario, your response procedures mean that you haven't sent people next to that container that's going to explode.
Sure, sure. Thanks very much, Daniel. Yeah, I mean, I think so. This is a nice one that I think ties together some of those things that you've been talking about, but with maybe a more, let's say, holistic view, I guess. So Buzz, thank you very much for your question, was asking, when the technology is advancing so swiftly that each facility has a brand new operating manual and maybe more than one, is there a key to approaching risk management, or will it just be sort of custom carpentry for the foreseeable future? So I don't know if there's if any of you want to volunteer to take that one on, which I've just kind of plucked out of the air there.
I nominate Dan. He's by far the most guy in this.
I'm not sure. I didn't pin on top of everyone, but yeah, the technology's changed. It's super exciting. I talked about it in less than a decade, going from lead acid to sort of building batteries in warehouses and then containerized different types of containers. Just think about the risk of, like, well, instead of keeping it all where you've got one aisle, and if there's a fire in a rack and people can't get out of one door, well, let's open it from the outside, like basic improvements like that. From the analytics perspective and batteries, yes, it's ever changing. There's better products being brought on the market. But if you look at actually the sort of most common cells to be installed over a few years, there's not been huge amounts of changes there. So you can still use the same sort of approaches. A lot of the modules that are still being installed today have been for a couple of years now. So it's not like it's changing from site to site. The overall setup for every site should have its own hazard mitigation assessment or something of that equivalent, where you look at the specific risks of the site, similar to how a fire risk assessment generally should be done site specifically as well, and it should account for operating procedures around it. So you always follow the planned preventive maintenance requirements and you set up a good approach around it. But in terms of the analytics, a lot of it can, if we were to build some of the batteries we're building today, for example, use batteries that were in the site that we brought online last year, and year before that, people were using those too. So it's not changing so fast that you can't keep up.
Okay. And Andrew, I think you've unmuted, so it would be only courteous to let you speak, I think. Go on.
Yeah, I think, Daniel's got a career in insurance if he ever wants one. He's covering all the bases, but, the fundamentals on risk management are going to apply whatever generation technology you're using. But also, as Gore Street have done, he's looking at the data analytics for assets that are 5 years old. So and it will work with them. So yeah, just really agreeing with what Daniel's said there.
Fantastic. And just to round things off, maybe KP, where do you kind of see the role of analytics in, say, like 5-10 years time with regard to, let's say, de-risking and insurance, I guess. But yeah, if you want to touch on any wider topics very briefly, then please do.
Sure. So, I mean, on a very high fundamental level, software usually, software is one tool out of many potential solutions to solve a certain problem. The great thing about software is it is almost infinitely scalable. And so if we look at an industry that is poised to grow exponentially, a lot of the owners and operators will 10x their portfolio over the next 4 or 5 years. How are you going to manage all these assets? You can't just hire 10x the amount of Dans. There just aren't enough people with that profile in the space, right? And also, it wouldn't be a cost-efficient solution. At least I hope, Dan, you get a good salary. So software, I think, really is the key enabler to make sure that we can grow as expected while being efficient on the operations. And that includes safety, but that also includes operations and maintenance, that includes asset management, lifetime performance, all these fun things. So I think really the importance and the role of analytics will actually grow as the industry grows exponentially, because there won't be any other possibilities to manage that growth in a cost-efficient way. And so I think we're only at the beginning, really, here right now. Like, all these folks on the webinar here with me, they are pioneers, and I'm extremely grateful that, you know, already they are looking for solutions, although they might possibly have been able to do it for 1 or 2 more years in a more manual way. But by doing it now and proactively, they're really paving the way for, you know, the laggards to have access to proven tools once the industry goes completely insane in, you know, 26, 27, when all these really big sites will come online.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just let that kind of sink in for a moment or two, because, you know, we've seen the industry grow so much over the years, and as you say, Kai Philip, it is really kind of just beginning in other ways. So from beginnings to endings, unfortunately, we are going to have to end it there. Thank you so much to everyone who's stuck with us through. It's been fascinating discussion, and, you know, I kind of wish we could tackle the rest of the 50 or so amazing questions that have come in, but well, that's just not reasonable an expectation, is it? Unfortunately. But yeah, from my side, I just want to thank everyone so much for joining. Thank you so much to Richard Beebe, Kai Philip Carries, Daniel Sherlock Burke, and Andrew Sinclair. Thanks so much for your time, guys. It's been really, I think it's been great for our audience to kind of, yeah, get to leverage your expertise and insights. And above and all of that, I guess, thank you so much to you, the audience, for joining us. And yeah, as I think Kai Philip kind of alluded to, thank you so much for being part of this incredible industry as well. It's an exciting place to be working every day. So yeah, with all of that in mind, and just a reminder that Acure and the other speakers will be happy to follow up on any questions that we didn't get through. Slides will be sent out. You will be able to watch this again on the on-demand on the site. With that, I'd just like to leave you all with best wishes and say goodbye for now. Thank you.